And just as a last welcome to all of you guys who were able to pop on just now, welcome to the Utah SHPO Brown Bag Speaker Series. We will be inviting on the folks from the John Jarvie Ranch Curriculum Project. And in order in which we're going to meet them here this afternoon, I'm going to first introduce Chris Merritt. He is the State Historic Preservation Officer here in Utah, and he's the one who really brainchilded this project and worked with the Bureau of Land Management out of Vernal, Utah, to really get this going. His second in command is Amanda Scheuerman. She is a researcher who lives here in Salt Lake City. She got her bachelor's degree from the University of Nevada in Reno, and she is currently working on, and she had her master's degree, I apologize, in American history from the University of Utah. She owns a small business here called Great Basin Historical Consulting. We also have, rounding out this dream team, Kylee Ehmann and Arvizo-Zavala. I'm very excited to welcome all of these guys to tell you all about the John Jarvie Ranch project. And so I believe I'm gonna switch things over to Chris Merritt right now so that he can kick off the presentation. Chris?
Yep. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Elizabeth says it right. I was lucky to pull together a dream team, Amanda, Kylee, and Joelle. I couldn't have asked for a better group of humans. But I wanted to start, first by thanking the Bureau of Land Management, the Vernal Field Office, who made this funding possible. So I'm going to switch right now to our presentation, and I appreciate everybody's patience as we hand off presentation to presentation. But this has been really 6 months, 7 months of hard work that you're going to see in a very small snippet. But the curriculum and lesson plans that these fine folks have developed are going to be available. It just won't be available in Daggett County or Vernal, but to anybody in Utah. And I'm not going to belabor my talking head, but I do want to throw it over to my screen and get going on the presentation as it slowly lingers over. There we go. So to put this in some context, we've had a long, very fruitful relationship with the Vernal BLM. I know I saw one of their names on here, archaeologist Bill Ritzy, but what we've done in the last 7, 8 years with the state and the BLM have really found cooperative partnerships to be beneficial to all of us. And so last spring, we were approached by the BLM to pursue a two-pronged project. One, to complete a detailed artifact cataloging effort at the John Jarvie Historic Ranch, which Chase Roberts, who's on here, he's another state history employee, he completed that. He's got to go stay on that site on the Green River for most of the summer, counting artifacts and photographing them. The other major part of the project was doing curriculum development. A lot of folks don't know about the John Jarvie Ranch, but it really does lend itself really well to a whole host of themes that students can pull into themselves, educators can use to teach about ecology, geology, math. And so it was really my job to take credit for hiring really smart people to do this curriculum for me. I don't like children, so I hire people that do, and they care about their education. I'm just joking. They do care about their education, and we've done a really great project. Right now, we're finishing up all the lesson plans, we're moving into the overall curriculum document, and we're hoping by the end of the month to have a nice, clean package that we will share. We'll put it on our website, the BLM is going to share. And so I just don't want to belabor this more, so I'm going to kick it over to Amanda to take us away. All right.
Hey, Amanda, you're still on mute. I apologize.
Can you hear me now? Okay, so I just want to thank everybody that came. This has been a really exciting project. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Ooh. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. And there we go. Okay, so a little bit about Jarvie Ranch before we get into the lessons. Jarvie Ranch is located in, like Chris said, in Daggett County, and it is in a valley called Browns Park. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to introduce a new word today, and that word is palimpsest. I want to just kind of explain what a palimpsest is, and then we'll get into talking about Browns Park and Jarvie Ranch. A palimpsest is when a piece of writing material has been written on, and then it's been effaced and rewritten on. And so you have traces of the first writing on that material, that writing material. And I would like to just introduce this picture, which is of a geologic palimpsest. So this is a ripple effect. It's part of the Browns Park formation, which is in Browns Park. It's sandstone, and you can see these ripples on it. Each ripple was when sediment fell down to the bottom of a lake. And they have these oscillating patterns on the ripples, and so that's how they're able to tell that it was at the bottom of a lake. And so geologists are able to extrapolate information by looking at each layer that's been left in this Browns Park formation. I would like to say, when we started this John Jarvie Ranch project, we decided that we wanted to tell the whole story, the broader story. And so with that, we discovered that there's a lot of depth and a lot of layers to the history at Browns Park and Jarvie Ranch, and it's connected to national themes. And so Browns Park and Jarvie Ranch are a historic palimpsest. So let's go in and talk about some of the things that are part of these layers at Browns Park and Jarvie Ranch. Ever since 1982, when the BLM acquired Jarvie Ranch, they've been working to preserve and retell the story of the ranch. And they created a cultural resource management plan where they recreated life. They have over 12.5 buildings and have been registered on the National Register of Historic Places in 1985. So on the surface, this may look like a singular regional history. And in fact, thousands of visitors come to Jarvie Ranch to experience frontier life. And Jarvie Ranch does all of this. It teaches us about John Jarvie, it teaches us about his life, but it also teaches us much more. It teaches us about interconnectedness of US history or events in history, and it is also a layered history. So multiple peoples have lived in Browns Park, and we'd like to tell that story of that they've left a trace of. So to start with, Browns Park used to be called Akumpuwukats, which is Ute for Sunflower Valley. You can see in this map that the Ute had a large land base, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. In 1805, Lewis and Clark charted the region, and just 30 years later, fur trappers and traders were in Browns Park. In fact, this is where they built Fort David Crockett in Browns Park. 3 trappers did. So you see the connection between Browns Park, and it's important in the fur trade, and that connection to national trends in US history. So John Jarvie was a cattle rancher, and from this we learn about the cattle industry and the importance of cattle after the gold rush in the Civil War. There was an increased need for cattle. And this was fueled by the Transcontinental Railroad and refrigerated cars, and that helped ship this cattle nationwide. And so Jarvie Ranch is connected to this history. So we also look at the geology of Browns Park and Jarvie Ranch. Jarvie was pulled into the mining industry, and he was probably searching for copper or silver. Copper is one of the minerals that are found in Browns Park or have been found in Browns Park. And we see his link to the growing copper industry after the electrical wire was invented and the telephone. So he was connected to that larger history as well. So there are several layers to the history of Browns Park, making it a palimpsest. There are many other stories that I wish I had time to tell in this meeting, but I don't. And so a visit to Jarvie Ranch is helpful because then you can learn more about it. But I just want to say that Browns Park and Jarvie Ranch they're interconnected to national trends and in events in history. So we're going to switch gears real quick. We're going to start talking about some of a selection of the lessons that we've prepared for the curriculum. And I'll just go ahead and start so we're not switching back and forth between everybody. And so I would like to talk about the Ute Map history lesson. This lesson was designed using maps, and I'd like to thank the American West Center for letting us use their maps and helping us with research in developing this plan. So our maps are derived from the maps from the American West Center. And in this program, in this lesson, students utilize static and interactive maps that help them visualize, contextualize, and make links to historical events on the map. So this first map that I'd like to share is part of the lesson. It shows the Ute land base before European exploration and subsequent immigration. And it also shows the different band names and you can see that the region that they lived in was stretched from as far east as Kansas, all the way west to Utah, as far north as Wyoming, and south in New Mexico. So this next map is also next in the series in the lesson, and it shows some historical events and changes in the land base of the Ute at the time. So the creation of the Uinta Valley Reservation in 1861 and the Confederated Ute Reservation, which was established in 1868. And so they can make links to events in history, in Ute history and national history, by looking at this map and seeing the decrease in land. And then third in the series is Ute land today. So you see in here the allotment pattern that occurred because of the Dawes Severalty Act, and you see the reservations of the Ute. And we left here the outline of the original pre-1860s land base, or pre-European exploration land base, sorry. And so that students can make connections that way between land loss and events in history. In addition to this, there's an interactive map, and if I exit this slideshow, I can show you. And the interactive map is really cool. It was designed by Whitney Seal, who works here at State History as well. And so I'm grateful to her for helping me with this, because I couldn't have done it without her. So this, I hope you can still see this. Nod yes. Yeah, okay, cool. So this is an interactive map with various layers depicting land change. And so what we can do is we can you can select each layer that you're going to use. I can unselect layers as well. And you can see different changes in history. Oh, we have some reservations still. Okay, so this is you see that's just like the static map that we have, but they can then go and look at this and choose which bits of history they wanted to look at. So if they wanted to look at comparison to the Ute or Ray Reservation, well, you can kind of see that they'll be able to do that. And so this interactive map, the students are then directed to engage in open dialogue and talk about the connections between Ute history and US history and land. So with the use, let's go back to our slides. Okay. Oh, that's not mine. Okay. Sorry, Kylie. So with the use of these maps in this map history lesson, students are able to explore the American West, expansion, and the history of American Indians. And this is an important history for students to learn, especially when they're looking at Jarvie Ranch. And so, yeah, that's all I have for my presentation. So I will go ahead and stop sharing and turn the reins over to Kylie. Okay. Oh, how do I do that? I'll need help again, I think, Elizabeth. I forgot how to.
First.
I think Kylie's got it.
Oh, does Kylie have it? Oh, I thought I was still going.
No, I got it. Alrighty, so hi, I'm Kylee Ehmann. I took over the geology lesson for the John Jarvie Historic Ranch. In this lesson, we are using the geology of Browns Park as a framework to explore the rock cycle, weathering, erosion more broadly, and not just specifically what kinds of rocks that you could find at Browns Park. I did this in part because Jarvie Ranch is very far away, field trips are very expensive, and I wanted this to be applicable to students wherever they are. The overarching goal of this lesson plan is to get students to see geology as a dynamic system that humans interact with, rather than just like static rocks that never change or something that doesn't really apply to them, because we all live with geology and wherever we are. These are based on the lesson plans and are specifically based on the Utah seed standards that are going into effect in the fall. They're all still kind of new, but the reason I use these standards are because they tie to three-dimensional science, which is becoming more of a national standard for how we're approaching science. So this is, instead of pushing kids to get the right answer, we're pushing kids to use scientific concepts to explore ideas. And so we're no longer saying this is right, this is wrong. It's what can you do to explore these scientific concepts. And again, the emphasis is on people at place living and exploring their local geology. There are 3 activities in this lesson plan. There's geology musical chairs, which is a riff on a activity I did when I was in 8th grade, and it really helped me learn the rock cycle and how rocks interact, and so I thought it'd be fun to adjust it to lower grades. There's a local geology worksheet that's place-based learning, and it encouraged kids to explore their local environments through photographs or through rock samples their teachers can buy. This local geology worksheet also ties into our Jarvie Ranch extension visit. So if you go to the ranch itself, you can use this worksheet that we've made and you can explore the geology if you're there. We also have a really fun place-based learning with mining. So we'll be asking teachers to be making and revising models, and kids exploring their little plots of mining land and seeing how that impacts the environment and what they can do to restore the environment. And it's also very discussion-based, and we're really encouraging kids to work for critical thought and not just regurgitating facts of science. I also claim the outlaw lesson because I love outlaws, like any Utahn should. I wanted to use the outlaws of Browns Park because after the fort left in the 1840s, a lot of the legitimate businesses, the trappers, the salespeople, they left with it, and that opened a space in Browns Park that was very open to we'll say that, open to outlaws and just things that were a little bit outside the law. The fun fact, the people who were ranchers were often, the outlaws themselves, like the Venn diagram of ranchers and outlaws is a circle in this area. And it's just, and I didn't want it to be like, oh, outlaws are cool, let's glorify them. I wanted to use it as a chance for kids to explore primary, secondary, and folkloric sources. So in these lesson plans, students will be able to define, recognize, and analyze primary, secondary, and folkloric documents. Again, these are based on the standards for Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming, especially the social studies and library media. And its emphasis is on the ways in which primary and secondary sources work and how to use them and synthesize them. Again, there are two main activities in this one. There's identifying and defining what each source is. And then the fun part of this activity is your kids will be making a booklet. So it'll be like, I don't know where mine is because I just cleaned my room and I don't know where I put anything. But it'll be kind of an origami booklet that kids can open, and it provides a tactile way to explore primary and secondary sources that goes beyond, again, just defining and regurgitating knowledge. And then we also have a Jarvie Ranch extension visit, which focuses on kids finding primary and secondary sources. So being able to figure out while they're in the moment. So going and seeing like John Jarvie's house would be a primary source. The gravestones at the site would be a primary source. A secondary source would be someone from BLM who works there, or an interpretive sign. And just really encouraging kids to critically think while they're at these sites. Again, there's also a lesson assessment that's discussion-based, and it encourages students giving feedback and critical thought. I'm not a very big fan of just like filling in the blank and regurgitating answers. So I really want these lesson plans to really push critical thought and kids having the chance to really explore their intellectual capabilities rather than what the teachers think they should be able to do. All right, now I'm gonna throw it over to Hello. We'll do this.
All righty. Give me just a moment, everyone. All right, can everyone see the slide? Excellent, okay. So I had the pleasure of working on two major lessons for the project. The first one is the architecture lesson. One of the great things about Jarvie Ranch is that it is such a wonderful place for adults and young people to be able to explore and get access to a lot of different experiences while they're there. The water wheel, as you can see in the picture, is one of those. It's a replica of the original that was located at Jarvie Ranch. And its primary use was to irrigate crops, and plants and things like that that were planted on the ranch. The wonderful thing about Jarvie Ranch is it is incredibly picturesque as well. The ranch is located directly on the banks of the Green River. And I'll talk a little bit more about the significance of the Green River when I go over briefly the ecology lesson. But going back to the architecture lesson, there's a couple of really important elements. The first one is, in this lesson, students will have an opportunity to learn about the different types of water wheels. They'll learn about the process of irrigation as well. And then also they'll be able to dive into the architecture of water wheels. One of the things that I wanted to do with this lesson is I wanted to utilize project-based learning as a way to get young people, to get students hands-on experiences with the content and the historical elements of Jarvie Ranch. And so in this lesson, students will be able to build their own replica water wheels, which is really great. Another thing that I thought was really important as a former teacher, myself, it's always really important for teachers and students to have access to content that students can directly, interact with and read. And so hopefully I can show this to you here. Here is an example of can everyone see the student content page? Is that showing up? No, or is it still on the slide? Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, let me go ahead and stick with the slides. I think I'm having some technical difficulties. All right, can everyone still see the slides now? Okay, great. So one of the things that I did with this lesson, as well as the ecology lesson, is I created a grade level specific Lexile content for students. And so inside the actual lesson plan, you will see a page or two of actual student content. And the way that it was done is I went and took the historical and scientific elements of the architecture lesson, for example, and then actually Lexiled that down to the appropriate grade level. And in this case, 4th grade, which can then be, it has attributes available for 3rd grade as well as 5th grade as well. So this is really great for teachers because it'll give teachers a specific handout. The students can actually read the historical and scientific content on their own. They can build some of their literacy skills at the same time that they're learning about the science and history of Jarvie Ranch. In this particular lesson, I was able to integrate language arts, informational text and foundational skills are part of this, and then also the basic understanding of scientific forces. All right, the next slide is about the actual sort of activity. So you'll notice in the picture above, this is an example from the lesson plan specifically. Students will have, and teachers will have guided instructions on how to actually build their own individual smaller scale replicas of water wheels. The benefit of doing project-based learning with children is that it gives them those hands-on experiences that give them depth of knowledge and understanding of what they're studying. And I really wanted students to have an opportunity to have a lot of fun with this. And when it's safe and when it's possible for students to actually go and visit Jarvie Ranch, they will have some, sort of experiential data to take with them about what it was like to really understand how water wheels function and how they work. So in this particular activity, students will be provided with a set of materials. They'll brainstorm on how do they want to build their water wheel replicas. And then it'll also give them a chance to learn about the science and history of water wheels as well. The ecology lesson, out of the 2 lessons that I was able to create, this one is probably my favorite. You'll notice the picture there of the Green River. There is something really wonderful and magical about putting young people into nature, giving them an opportunity to explore and to get a sense of kind of the things that are going on around them. In this lesson, students will learn about the ecology of Browns Park. And so, it's a very unique ecosystem located in a valley that has relatively, a little bit more mild sort of like weather phenomena versus, the surrounding areas in the Great Basin. They'll learn about river ecology as well, and then animal and ecosystem ecology. One of the great things about this lesson is that students will have an opportunity to learn about some species that have been known to live previously or currently do call Browns Park home. One of them is the greater sage grouse, which is a very, very important animal to the indigenous peoples in the Uinta Basin regions, as well as just a really, really fun animal that has a lot of quirks. They produce, their offspring and live in these elements that are called leks, L-E-K-S. And the sagebrush specifically that is indigenous to, the Uinta Basin, the Great Basin areas and Browns Park are essential to their long-term survival. So students will learn about all of these intricate connections between the ecosystem, the river, the animals, and humans as part of the lesson. This lesson also includes a guided reading exercise, so students will be able to directly read, Lexiled, grade level appropriate content. They'll build their language arts skills. The big thing about this lesson is that it does have science and language arts incorporated, but it also includes fine arts. And so you'll notice here, the big activity of this lesson is students will be able to build their own dioramas. And so they will utilize photos that you can see here on the presentation as examples, where they can recreate an ecosystem that would be conducive to supporting the greater sage grouse. And so after reading the Lexiled content, after receiving direct instruction from teachers, or even possibly visiting the site, they can build their dioramas and understand how this ecosystem is really part of a larger whole. And that's the big takeaway for this lesson, is giving students an opportunity to see how everything is interconnected, and especially in such a beautiful place such as Browns Park and Jarvie Ranch. Okay.
Thank you guys so much. That was a fantastic presentation. And I've been working with you guys for a little while, but I didn't know that you had that many irons in your fire. That was pretty incredible. Thank you for sharing. We're going to open it up to the floor for question and answers now. We did have a couple of questions in the chat that I will start on while people sort of start thinking about how they want to formulate their question. And I'll remind you guys that you can ask your questions within the group chat, or you can also ask your questions by unmuting your mic and just going for it with your normal human voice. So here's a couple of the questions that we had in the group chat. The first one is fairly straightforward. It's Amanda, that word you were using, can you give us a little bit more information, including the spelling? You're on mute still, I'm sorry.
Again. Okay, so palimpsest, let me spell it. Okay, I have it written down, but P-A-L, I have to write it to spell it. P-A-L-I-M-P-E, P-S-E-S-T. Okay. Yes, that's how you spell it. And then more background on it?
Yeah, if you could maybe just give us a definition really quickly. I think that was a word that is new to a lot of people.
Right. Okay. So like I described earlier, a palimpsest is like a piece of writing material that has been written on and then has been erased or effaced in some way and then rewritten on the same material. So that material then has traces of the previous writing. If you imagine writing on a piece of paper in pencil and then you erase it, there's sometimes there's still a trace of that left. And so palimpsest describes that writing material and that remaining trace of the past. And so, and they're really cool, actually.
Yeah, that is really cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We had a second question in the chat, and it was actually regarding the John Jarvie Ranch itself. Kirk Huffaker asked whether or not the Jarvie Ranch is currently open for public tours. I know that we, at one point, had some folks from the BLM on. I wonder if they could help us out with that.
Yeah, so this is Chris. So Amber Koski, who's at the Vernal Field office, she did send out an email yesterday announcing that they're going to do a soft opening on May 15th out at the ranch. They are going to postpone Jarvie Fest to the fall, but it's always good to probably call the Vernal Field office in advance of you driving out there. And so for everybody's benefit, if you haven't been out to this corner, it's a long drive. I think Chase can tell you, because when he was out there last summer, his engine blew up, I believe. So you take I-80 all the way basically to Rock Springs, Wyoming, and then south to Daggett County on Flaming Gorge, or you can go all the way on Highway 40 to Vernal and then north up towards Brown Park. But you're talking a good 3.5-hour drive, but it's also not a bad place if you want a social distance in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, Outlaws were the original social distancers in that sense. Have another question. Are these lessons available to family as well as schools? And then I'll ask a follow-up question. How might they become available if they are available?
Yeah, well, I'll keep talking. Yes, these were made with public dollars while they were focused on Jarvie Ranch. We'll be posting those on our website. The BLM will be hosting the product. The lesson plans, like, I cannot overestimate how awesome these 3 humans are that worked on this project. The amount of time and effort that they put into this and thinking creatively and how to do it is incredible. And so there's really cool ways, and we can even probably share some of the lesson plans before this whole package is complete, but so many great ways to get kids thinking about their environment and water wheels and all this, and hands-on stuff and art and science, that we do hope that it's not isolated to a small group, up in Northeast Utah, but lots of people will use it. So we will definitely be making those available, and we'll work with Elizabeth to share that through her Public Archaeology Network newsletter, which you haven't signed up for that, you should, or on our website, and we'll do social media. We'll get it out to every corner that we can.
Yeah, perfect. And I should add that if you are interested in getting sort of the direct line onto these as they do come online, just email me or Chris Merritt, and we'll make sure that you are on whatever group list we have when these things do become available. Make sure that gets distributed to you. We have one more question. Do any of you have a favorite outlaw or rancher story, maybe that you came across while researching? Everyone's smiling, so probably a bunch of no's. Well, oh, go ahead. Kylee.
So my favorite story is about Ned Huddleston, and that was his name while he was a slave. He after the Civil War was no longer a slave, and so he became a rodeo clown, and he escaped, has this daring story of how he escaped death. He was part of this gang, and they were attacked, ambushed, and he hid in a grave and played dead, and they left him, as dead. And so he escaped. He did end up getting an injury in his leg, I believe, and he ended up in he changed his name after that to Isom Dart, and then frequented Browns Park and became, an outlaw. And but he was an interesting character in this, whole story of Browns Park and Jarvie Ranch.
My favorite is Josie Bassett. I love her so very much. She is most often known because she was friends with Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch. But she also, at one point, a bunch of wealthy cattlemen moved into the area and tried to steal her cattle and push her and her sister off the land. So they stole cattle from them. She moved away in 1913, became a bootlegger during the Prohibition, which is great. And she lived until the 60s, and she didn't even die of old age. A horse kicked her in the chest, and that's the only thing that took her down. I love her so much. She's so great.
And I'll throw in that the connection here is kind of interesting. And I don't know if Bill, you want to unmute, but 15, 20 years ago, archaeologists working near Jarvie Ranch actually uncovered a cache of ammunition hidden underneath a boulder. We're talking hundreds of cartridge cases for rifles and pistols still in their boxes. Why they got dumped there and hidden there, you don't know, but it makes you interesting, you know, that connection to the outlaw story and caching your munitions and coming back. And I mean, they're all still live rounds. I mean, they were extremely well preserved. But I do think those artifacts kind of connect to that story of this area being used as that travel route. I don't know, Bill, you're the archaeologist out there in Vernal, if you wanted to add anything to that, or did he have to leave? Yeah, he had a day job.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Joel, did you want to share one of your stories?
I don't have a story specifically to like some of the humans in regards to Jarvie Ranch. I think my favorite story about Jarvie Ranch is the ecological one. It is such, me and Amanda had the opportunity to go visit the ranch back in November, and even during the cooler months, it was incredibly breathtaking. And I think one of the things about Jarvie Ranch that lends itself well to telling stories, whether the humankind or the animal or like plant kind, is you can just see the richness of things that are there. It's really easy to make direct connections between the river and the actual ranch itself, and all the historical elements are on the ranch as well. So you can see, you know, how they used, you know, plows or hitches, you know, tied to, you know, the horses and things like that, the actual store. And so for me, I think the best part for me was just learning the story of Jarvie Ranch and Browns Park. It has not only historical significance, but it really invokes a lot of curiosity. Like I still have a ton of questions. You know, if we had more time on this project, I could probably think of like a dozen more lessons to create, just because it's just so fascinating. And I think that's one of the great things about creating curriculum is, you know, I think teachers and students alike, we are really interested in learning and being creative and like having our curiosity sparked. So that's what I think is great about Jarvie Ranch, is that it's just such a really cool place to keep learning and to learn new things.
Yeah, there is an incredible diversity of subjects that the John Jarvie Ranch touches on. That's a really rich vein in a way. We have a ton more questions. Robert and Alice Bursch, do you want to ask these yourselves? Okay, no, I'll go ahead and ask on their behalf. So in the lesson of fur trappers, do your lessons include the names of the trappers who were there?
So it's not an actual lesson on the fur trappers. That's in the introductory history. I have not included their names, but it's a good idea to include their names because, yeah, that would be great.
I apologize. Yeah, and then in general, these stories of people, are they included? Or could we include them? Is there somewhere else where we could maybe put them, like blogs that we could link to?
Blogs?
I mean,
yes.
What people in the chat are saying is that the personal stories are pretty cool.
Okay. Well, and you know, that would be an interesting project to be able to do. I haven't thought about that. So thank you for the idea. But I can even if you wanted more information, I can email you like information sources to go back to and read about these people. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting history. And so, yeah, I can, I don't know how we could share my email, but if you guys wanted to email me, then that would be great.
We can definitely find a way to connect you with people who are interested in more information. Also, Robert and Alice Bursch were looking to find where they could find the full story of Ned Huddleston. Is that included maybe in the Outlaw lesson, Kylee?
Yeah, I'll share one of my screens just for a sec. This is
Sure.
open. It would help if I made this bigger, wouldn't it? Oh, sorry, 1 second. All right, can you all see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so in the Outlaw lesson plan, in our teacher background, we have a bunch of biographies about all the different outlaws that were particularly prominent in histories. And in that, we do have Isambard or at Huddleston. And I got a lot of this information from state history. So there's a bunch of resources online for free that have his story. But this is a brief overview. And he's also integrated into the end of the lesson plan as part of primary sources, as part of a way to challenge kids to really question what their ideas of what an outlaw was and who they looked like and who they were.
Yeah, I was wondering, did the Utah History to Go page inform any of that? Do we have that on History to Go? Because that's an incredible resource. There's often a lot of stories of individuals in history there. Chris, do you have more to add on that?
Yeah, and Jay Buckley also points that out too, that Utah History to Go is just an incredible, incredible resource. And it was actually really tailored to target students and educators. So it's kind of nice little bite-sized chunks of history, but it's all, you know, thoroughly peer-reviewed and pretty solid. So I'm going to throw a little link into the chat window for everybody if they want to, you know, copy and paste that, because it's really a cool resource.
Awesome. And there is a question that was asked and then later answered in the chat. I'll just read this aloud for posterity. Are there artifacts on display elsewhere on the ranch or from the ranch? And Bill Wrightsey from the BLM says that yes, there are artifacts on display at the John Jarvie Ranch. So when it's open in mid-April, my chat went away. He said that he would be happy to go down and check it out with you. And looks like this is Chris Merritt's screen of the, I assume, small museum at the John Jarvie Ranch. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so these are some shots from the ranch itself. Chase Roberts, State History, took these photos, but this is what he spent his summer counting, labeling, and documenting. But just to give you a taste, that it was really attempted to recreate that late 19th, early 20th century life at the ranch, where there was a store, there was a post office, this was a major ferry crossing across the Green River. So just tons and tons of cool stuff to go see up there. And as you can see, it's very much open air history, which is sometimes my favorite thing, right? It's now curated perfectly in a museum. It's kind of go explore and take yourself back to the 1880s and 1890s.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing these photos. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Chase has PTSD from all these, I think.
And is there a virtual tour of this area for people who are unable to visit personally? It is pretty far out there.
It is, I'll keep talking. It is a long ways out. One of the byproducts of this effort is I was working with a colleague of mine in Florida who does a lot of virtual reality and 3D modeling. And so we're trying to find ways to take 3D scans of some of these objects that connect to the John Jarvie story. And he actually designs interactive walkthroughs using a video game engine. So it's like a first-person shooter kind of way. So we're trying to find ways to get him some additional money so there could be like an interactive tour component. I think right now, you know, looking at our photos, looking online is the best you can do for a virtual tour. But I know the BLM is interested in increasing the presence just because it's such an underused and kind of forgotten part of the state. But the BLM is doing a lot of work to keep those buildings up and to get people out there.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thanks. M. Hufner says, Hoel gets me thinking, are there lessons you've learned in this project that could help teachers in other areas develop local history projects?
Absolutely. So when I first started this project, I don't know if I ever said this out loud to my other team members, but I was super intimidated because I do not like history. And it wasn't until this experience that I realized that it was probably that feeling was a product of my own schooling, right? Right. In terms of how it was taught to me and what I learned from it or what I didn't learn from it. And so coming into this project, I was really excited to have my perspective changed, and it definitely changed, which is amazing. One of the things, so with that being said, I'll go ahead and quickly share this, do a screen share here. One of the things that helped me in my journey to engaging more with history and really truly loving it was this document here. And I can definitely share it with Elizabeth and other folks. So prior to us actually writing the lessons, all of us did sort of like our own research to get an understanding of, what sort of topics and things were we going to include. On my end of things, my training as a teacher, I have a lot of experience at the elementary and secondary level, but most of my training as a teacher has been more so in the science realm and in civics and like social justice. And so I came across and found this document here, which is, basically a primer to help educators and historians learn how to develop and plan history lessons and history experiences for young children. And it totally blew my mind. It was such an amazing, accessible text that allowed me to sort of resituate, how do we teach young children about history? What does this actually look like? How do we make it palatable and fun to them? And so I definitely recommend folks who are looking at history curriculum development and more about the history and how to actually teach history. This is a great document to be able to review. I really, really appreciated it and enjoyed it. In terms of the question specifically, I think the biggest thing that I've learned from this project is remember that history is so incredibly rich and contextual, right? Everything from the objects that you see in a local place to the people that are currently there, the people who used to be there, everything to the buildings and the geography of it, in Kylie's lessons, even the geology. And so history is really, really, really robust, right? There is so much that can encompass history education, learning, and teaching. And so allow yourself to just sort of like, this is how I talk about it because I nerded out on this project so much, but I allowed myself to sort of sit in the expansiveness of it, if that makes sense. Like, because there is a ton. And so for educators who are looking to develop history curriculum, just immerse yourself in it, like as much as you possibly can. Learn about everything, be excited about it. Things that interest you more than others, follow that intuition and then go towards those things. And that's helped me out a ton in this project. Plus working with my colleagues, each of them had an area of focus that they really, really loved. And so then I was able to use their knowledge and what they shared to then inform the passion that I had for the specific lessons I created. So hopefully that's helpful to you as you and other educators think about creating more history curriculum.
Thank you. That was really well put. And we're winding down right now. It sounds like people are having to go because, 1 o'clock. Does anyone have any parting words that they would like to offer before we close this out for the afternoon?
I just want to thank you, Elizabeth, for getting us organized for today. But more importantly, I want to thank those 3 awesome dream teamers. Rarely do you get the chance to get someone getting a PhD in education, someone who just graduated with a master's in education, congratulations, Kylee, and someone with a master's degree in history all on one team coming at this problem from multiple angles. I think that was really the biggest benefit I saw in my kind of perspective on this is if we just had only historians or only education, I don't think the overlap would have been as great. So these 3 are awesome. And if you have jobs, hire all 3 of these because they're just rock stars.
They are rock stars. This is really incredible. The multidisciplinary aspect really shines through, and you guys have created amazing products. And Bill Wrightsey from the BLM says that everybody should come out and visit the John Jarvie Ranch. And I think we'll leave it there for this afternoon. Thank you everyone so much for coming. Thank you to our 4 panelists. You've created something absolutely incredible. This is such a great resource, and we'll be sure to get it out before the next school year so that educators and teachers across the state have the opportunity to use it. I will email some follow-ups for people so that if you want to continue this conversation with any of our presenters, you can do that. And I just, again, thank you all for coming. This was our first Zoom recorded brown bag presentation, and I really appreciate all of you guys showing up to be guinea pigs for us. Seems like it worked. So thank you, enjoy your afternoon, and stay safe.